Hello and welcome back to Mars. I'm Mick. We're playing Stationeers. Now, today we are going to have a go at rewriting our Harvey. Now, with the recent updates, we did get some new commands for our IC chips, and it allows us to address many items individually without having to use pins to connect them all up. So this should allow us to do many devices are connected to a single chip. Now this is going to show the real power of what you can do with these new commands here, because it is sort of so well suited to perform a single task over many like items instead of trying to perform heaps of different tasks over the many different items, because if you're trying to perform many different tasks with different items, you're going to pretty quickly run out of code. When you want to do the same thing on a heap of items that are all the same, and you'd have them all run separately, this is the real power of it all. So we are going to run all of our Harvies off a single chip, whereas previously we've been using 3 Harvies per chip. So I've had to have four chips just to run these 12 here. We're going to run all of them. Oh, 24 of them. Well, I could run 24 of them off the one chip there, but these ones are my perennials, so I'll have them not collecting seeds, so I'll have to have them running off one chip. And these ones over here will be my not perennials, whatever they're called. I know gardening, shut up. And we shall have them running off another chip, because I will get them to collect seeds. I probably could do it all off one, but I don't want to. Well, you can, but it just means you can't control as many of them. Now, I did have a plan to do this where I could control 256 Harvies off the one chip. I have since had a big brainwave, and now I should be able to get 512 Harvies all running off the one chip. So let's see how we go. Now, from this, I will be stealing my old code from one of the old ones. Yoink. And we should just be modifying that. There's not a lot that we've got to do with that. So if we switch you on, import you. Yeah, that's the right one. Cool. And put our new chip in there. You can go back over there. Right, so we are going to use, well, basically modify the old code there, because that has the code in there to actually control a Harvey by itself, although that doesn't really take much to do, but yeah, we've got something to start with. Now, because that one does do it multiple with three things, now we've just got to change it to a heap more. Right, so the way the old one works is it just aliases one set of Harvies, or aliases Harvey to one pin, the hydroponics to the next pin, then runs through the code, which is a reasonably short amount of code to decide how to run the Harvey, and then it comes back and switches over to another pair and runs the same amount of code. Now, we only do this 3 times because we've only got 6 pins to attach things to, but now that we don't need that, we can use our load batch named command. By changing the name, we can separate these more than just 3 times, because we can name as many as we like. Now, the way I'm going to store the names to all these devices is to just push them into the stack, and we can push 512 things into the stack. Right. Now, the way I was going to identify these is if I had my namerator, it was to identify Harvey 1 and our hydroponics device 1. So I could just store them into the stack and then retrieve them one after the other. So your Harvey 2 and hydroponics device 2. But I don't need to do that, because when I'm addressing them, I will be addressing Harveys of a certain name, and I'll be addressing hydroponics devices of a certain name. I can actually give these two the same name, and because they're separate devices, or different types of devices, I can still access them separately. So I shall call you Harvey set. Well, let's continue 13. I've got 12 on the other side. And if I copy that and call you also the same name, I now only have to store one name to refer to both those items. Okay, so making sense yet? Hope so. Probably not. Anyway, so we should keep the same bit of startup code, which just decides whether or not you want the Harvey to wait, harvest seeds, and if you want it to wait until it has fertilizer. Now we're going to keep our setting 1. This is just a startup command. It sets our database our housing to 1 because we use that on a separate chip where the greenhouse monitor will set that to 1 if it's safe to plant stuff. So that just tells the Harvies that, yeah, the environment's okay to plant stuff. You've got water, you've got enough CO2, enough pressure, the right temperature, so you can plant stuff, because we don't want them wasting seeds if it's freezing or boiling hot or no water or whatever. That's just the safety we've got on it there. Now, this bit here, we're going to just have to get rid of the whole lot because that is referencing the pins. Okay, so we shall do that. So we shall just say, be gone to you. Yep, I will need to go back to the start eventually. And all gone. I will still need my yield. Okay, so first thing we have to do is we have to store the name of the devices into the stack. So we shall, before we jump into the code, we shall need to set up the stack. You can do this through a separate bit of code, or you can just do it here. So we shall put in the hash code for Harvey. Oops. Harvey set, what did we say, 13. Oop. Right, that will push that into there. So I guess we'll want to put in a few more of them. So you shall be 14. I haven't named them yet, but it doesn't matter. And I shall also just push, at the end of that, I shall push a 0 so we know when we've got to the end of the list. Okay, so that's set up our stack with the names of ours. Yes, I'll have to add some more in there, but that's got it so far. So we've got these stored into the stack, and we shall now have to read them back one at a time and then run the code that we've got. So now the first thing we shall need to do is set our stack pointer. So move into the stack pointer, we shall need to reset that to 0. Because after it's pushed all them in, it'll be sitting at 4. So reset it back to 0 so we know where we're going. So that is outside of our main loop. So now we shall, yep, that'll do. Now, so as we're coming into the main loop, we shall want to increase our stack pointer and then pull out with the first set of devices there. So we shall add a stack pointer equals the stack pointer plus 1. So we've increased the number of the stack pointer, and then we shall peak. I guess I'll need to put in an alias. Well, I'll need a variable to store that, won't I? So we'll call it set name to register 10. That's just 10 because I very rarely use that many. So we shall peak whatever the stack pointer is into set name. That's the name of the Harvey set we're using. So that name will apply to both the Harvey and the hydroponics device. Right, so now we shall keep doing that. Now if that reads a 0, we know we're at the end. So we shall want to branch equal to 0. So if the set name equals to 0, I shall need to go back and to the start. So I might call you reset. I shall put another tag up there. which will reset back to 0. So if the set we pull out equals 0, we're at the end of the hash, we go back to reset. So this will go through the code. You can go away because we then need to go in to check the device. So I'll read the first one, go check the device. When it comes back to the top, it'll come back to start. Increase it again, read the next one, set the device, and so on until it gets to read 0, which is the last device, and it resets the pointer back to 0, and then carries on, keeps reading the first one again. So that one will control however many of these we put in there. It will read through them all one at a time and then run this piece of code. Now we shall be addressing all our Harvies now with our load and save a batch named commands. These are new ones we got in the last IC update, and they are very, very powerful commands. Now they do come with a warning, because the Rocket did pop a comment in the Discord there to say that when you are addressing these, they do have to query the entire device database to actually find what they're talking to. So if you've got it set to a pin, the pin knows what item in the database it's talking to, so you can go straight there and do it. So the batch names don't know which device they're talking to, so they then have to go and query the entire database to find out which ones it's meant to be talking to. So it's a bit more processor heavy. As I say, very, very powerful, but use it sparingly is the advice he gave. So as with all this sort of stuff there, with great power comes great responsibility. So yes, we can do it, but only when you have to. Right. So use pins when you can. But for situations like this is really the best way to do it. So yes, use pins when you can. So let's make some code that doesn't use any pins. That's responsible use of great power. All right, so now, as I say, we are not going through the pins there. So any load or save devices we're going to have to change. Right, so as we check the device, device not set, doesn't really matter anymore because it's a batch command and there's no such thing as a not set. It just won't respond. Right, so we are now wanting to load from the Harvey. So we're not just loading from the Harvey. I shall probably need some hash numbers for the Harvies, won't I? So up here we shall need to define the Harvey and define the tray. So I'll need to find out what they are now, won't I? Harvey, not the kit, the Harvey is you. And the tray. Hydroponics. It's a device, not a tray. Let's get the device, which is you. We'll call it tray just to confuse everyone. Right, so they're the hash numbers for those two devices. We can call them now individually. Okay, so we're loading the device. We are loading a batch named. These two. So we're loading into Harvey, into R0 from the device Harvey. From the Harvey device, it needs to know the name of the particular Harvey device. So that's the hash for the device type. And then we need to know the hash for the name of it, which was the name of the set. Set name kind of sounds like a command, doesn't it? It's not the name of the set. Well, we'll figure it out. Okay, and we want to read the activate. Now we need a batch mode because it is a load batch command. You have to decide which way you want to, because there could be more than one item that is which is there. And yeah, if there is multiple ones there, you've got to say whether you want to add all the values together, where you want to take an average, or maximum, minimum, or whatever else. Now there should only be one there, but depends on how you set it up. You may have multiple ones there, but we want to know if it's actually doing something. So if it is active, it'll be a 1. We want to know if it's 0. If there's multiple ones there, we want to make sure they're all 0. So we shall just take the minimum of them all there. So if there's multiple ones there, they all have to be doing nothing before we keep going. So if we say branch not equal to 0, back to the start. We're not using RAs anymore. So I can probably get rid of all of them, can't we? You, and probably you, and you. Right, so we would want to first check, see if the Harvey is doing something. If it is, just move on to the next one. If it's not doing something, let's keep going. Now we want to load from the hydroponics device whether or not it's mature, but we're not loading from a slot anymore. We are load batch slot named load named slot. There we go. So load batch named slot reader. That was a command we were missing from the update, but we've got that in the second update, which followed pretty quickly. Now we're loading into 0. Now we want to load from the device type, which is the tray, and we want to know which tray, what's the name of the tray. We named it the same thing as the hydroponics, so just set name. We want to load from slot 0. We want to know if it's mature, and once again, because we are loading a batch, we need to know the batch mode. So we want to know if we are what do we want to do? We'll grab the maximum. There should only be one. Oops. It doesn't really matter. So if it's -1, there's nothing there. Go to the plant. If it is mature, or if it's not mature, not equal to 0, not equal to 1, it's not mature. Just go back to the start. Check the next one. If there is a mature plant there, we go to our next stage here. Once again, we've got to load from the hydroponics device whether or not it's seeding. So fix the same one once again. So we're loading a batch named from the tray, which is the type of device we're reading from, and the name of the device, which is the name of the set. Slot 0, seeding. Once again, minimum. Once again, there should only be one, so it doesn't matter what you use in there. Now let's be consistent, shall we? We'll put them all to minimum. That may or may not be right. So we've got that one there. Now, if it is, depending on what value we've got the seeds there, we either go back to the start or we continue where we want to harvest. We're going to save to Harvey that we want to harvest and set it to 1. So once again, we're not talking to the pin Harvey. We are now talking to the save a batch named the type, which is Harvey, the name of the Harvey, which is a set name. We want to tell it to harvest and tell it 1. Right, so that will do all of the stuff that we wanted it to do, and all it has done is just change the name each time. It just changes set name each time, so it's referring to a different Harvey each time and a different tray each time. But it can do all that and check that there. So if it wants to plant, once again, we go down to our plant routine here. It's going to check and see if Harvey actually has anything in it. But once again, we are load batch name into R0 from Harvey, set name. We want to know quantity, if there's actually anything in the Harvey input slot. So we shall once again say minimum. If there's nothing in there, go back to the start, don't bother. Now we shall load from the housing, the value we set here. That is, once again, I'll say that's controlled by outside of it all there. I might actually move that one to the top. I'll move you up to the top. We can be responsible with our superpowers there by moving that to the top. So the first thing it checks is whether or not it's safe to plant stuff. So that way, if it's not safe to plant stuff, it won't use any more batch named commands, which are the ones that we're trying to avoid using. And I've used a lot of, but that's all right. Okay, so we load that. If the room says it's safe to plant, keep going. If it's not safe to plant, don't plant. Well, duh. Right, if there's nothing to plant, don't plant it. Well, double duh. Now we decide, asking to the end, do we want to wait for fertiliser? So once again, we have to load from the hydroponics tray, see if it has any fertiliser. So we are loading slot batch named or batch named slot from the tray, the one called set name. Slot 1, which is the fertiliser slot. Once again, we are using a batch load batch, so we have to tell it how we're going to do this. We read them all and just take the minimum. Once again, the way we've got it set up here, there should only be one by that name. Now, if it is our wait for fertiliser condition is not met, go back to the start. If it is there, we can keep going. Now what we're going to change here is we then go on to check the water, make sure the water's at the right temperature and that there is actually water there. Well, this will use an extra couple of load batch commands there, which we're trying to avoid. So let's let the room do that decision for us and just get rid of those ones completely. As we say, it's responsible use of our superpower. Now, so once we've got that, because I can get the room to look for those things there, because we've already set it at the top there. We don't need to check it again. So if all those conditions are met, we want to save to the Harvey. Once again, save a batch named. We're not writing to a single one. Of type Harvey. The one called set name, and we want it to tell it to plant, set plant to 1. So we have converted this code now that should run with these ones here. So they're just running through the top one there. We pick a name, run through this, pick the next name, run through all this again. It should be the same code, the same letter set of code which runs for each of the Harvies. And we are only changing one line up here each time we go. So if I confirm that, export you to the Harvey housing. And how are you lot all doing? We have seeds. So now if I switch you on, you are named, you are not. I switch you on, you should now harvest that lot. Away we go. If you've got some seeds, you should replant it. Oh wow, there's a few soybeans in that one. That must have been a good bit of poop in that one. And one more. And you are waiting for fertiliser. Good stuff. I've got a big pile of poop here. I give it fertiliser, it should now be happy to plant. Now don't rip it out. Excellent. That's working the way we want. So now I should just be able to name all the other ones and we should have all of them working on the same sort of thing. So let's switch that off while I'm doing this and see how we go. Right, 13. Harvey, 14. Right, okay, I think I have renamed everything there. Now, all I should have to do is switch on. Boop. And we're all planting. Oh, I've got to add the extra names in, don't I? Okay, well, I shall add the extra names in. Now, so because we've denoted the end of the list with a 0, I can just add more names in here, as many as I like in here, and I don't have to change any of the rest of the code because it will find the end of the list just by waiting till it finds a 0. Right, so I can just copy you 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, copy 1, 2, 3, 22, 23, and 24. Good. Right. So now you should just have to write them, and that's it. That's set up my Harvey names and export you all. There we go. Oh, wow, look at that. That's nice and synchronized. I thought they were all going to go at once. Oh, it's because I've got the yield between each one, isn't it? Well, plants don't grow that quickly. I guess a yield between each one is all right. And lovely. So now I've got to replant you all. So now, of course, because they're running all on their own schedule, I can plant any type of plant in there and they're not dependent on each other. Because I suppose with the genetics now, they all grow at different speeds. So, yeah, that's the way you got to do it now. You can't just wait for them all to grow. So they'll all be harvested as soon as they are ready, and they will all be planted as soon as they're ready. So now we are waiting for, it will of course, when it runs out of fertiliser, it'll stop, but that's because that's what I've told it to do. There we go. 48 of them. Which of course now I can replant. Oh, I could give it to them to replant, or I can just replant it myself. I'll just keep doing that till I've built up a few seeds, I guess. That was one of the other ones. That's okay. I thought it pulled out my seeds immediately. Right. So that is the updated Harvey code. So that will be, yeah. So I say you can keep punching more and more. So I could have put all 24 of these devices in on the one script. So I've still got, wow, I've still got heaps of lines left. So I'm only up to line 56, so I can add in an extra 70 of these devices there before I have to start going to multiple scripts. As I say, now you can, the stack is 512 items, so I can set up a couple of scripts that just keep pushing more and more Harvies into the stack, and then pull those out and just replace it with this code here. Because after you've put stuff in the stack, it'll stay in the stack, even if you overwrite the chip. So this one is then just reading that data out of the chip, and it'll work them all in. So because I've got lines of code spare, I can do it all on the one chip. But yeah, so although I can't imagine why you'd want so many of them there. I guess if you're making up a food trading farm, that'd need a lot of them there. But anyway, that is the, let's say, a Harvey controller that can control 512 items there. So that is the real power of these things there. So that's, as I say, that script is very, very powerful, and it will produce a lot of stuff pretty quickly. So you can go into there, you can make that, oh, and you can make that. Lovely. Now, as I say, this will run fantastic for running the same piece of code on multiple items, which are the same process on each item, which makes it beautifully set up to do this type of thing. I mean, you can get it to do other things. So if you have, what else? You have sorting to be done. You could set up a heap of sorters, or if you're trying unsuccessfully to use these things for sorting, like I am at the moment, you can use a batch one to try and get them to sort. That doesn't quite work at the moment, but I'm getting there. You could use it to control a heap of silos that are storing different materials there. If you want to vend them out, that would be a way to do it. And so, say anything that has the same thing happening on multiple things. Say you can run sorters to sort out stuff instead of having to go through the sorter computer UI. You can just set up a heap of sorters, same sort of thing, just operating off a single chip. Just name them all differently. Away they go. You don't need to use the vending machines, which are horribly expensive to store all your items because it's easy to retrieve them. You can just use a heap of silos, and once again, just control them all off a single chip. But I'll say once I remove all of my chips there, this is going to be a pretty sad looking chip cabinet. I've still got 3 in there. It's not that bad. And right, so then we have our greenhouse manager. That's going to be the next thing we've got to do, because we need to monitor the water. So I've got a little thing on here to monitor the water temperature and pressure. I can then send that information, plus I have a gas sensor over here to measure the room temperature, pressure, how much CO2 it's got. If they're all safe for planting, all it has to do is set the housing number to 1 to tell it that it's safe to plant, or it can just set it to 0 if it's not safe to plant, and the Harvies won't plant. So yeah, that's the way you can do it with them. And say that will control up to 512 Harvies. Good luck. That will take a very long time to manufacture all of them. But anyway, whatever makes it work for you. Right, so that's about that's about it for the Harvies. You can now control a massive number of them, but that's the save a batch slot named save batch named command. That's a very powerful command, but it is a little bit processor heavy, so use it sparingly. Also good for building very fast airlocks. Yep, we're through. Admittedly, this is Mars, so they're generally pretty fast airlocks regardless.
Hunger caution.
Nice. Hunger caution? Well, where am I going to get some food from? Problem solved. Right. That's about it for today, so until next time, happy building. See ya.